Projects and role-based access control are two of the defining features of Onshape Enterprise. Let's take a look at what makes them so unique. It's important to understand all Onshape users have some form of project management and the ability to control who has access to their document. For most, a single document is a great project-level container for storing all data unique to that project, and Onshape sharing tools make it easy to share with individuals or teams. But for larger companies with more complex products or sophisticated design processes, we have new tools to make managing data in Onshape even easier. With Onshape Enterprise, we've added the ability to create projects, which are an organization of related documents. And you can control projects with role-based access. This gives larger organizations a standard project container and makes sharing that project with the right people easy. Let's start with the creation of a project. To create a new project, click the Create icon on the top left corner of the Documents page, then choose Project. The Create New Project dialog will appear, and you can give your project a name and description. Then we can define the permission scheme. Think of a permission scheme as a group of permissions being applied at once. So if I'm creating a project and I need to share this project with many different teams in my company, all with varying permissions based on their role in the process, I could create one permission scheme that reflects all of that and apply it here. This greatly simplifies how permissions for large teams are managed, and you can see that we have two permission schemes to choose from, a project default scheme that we use most often, and a restricted access scheme which restricts or removes certain permissions for certain groups within the enterprise. Keep in mind, you can change permission schemes for a project as needs in that project change. After defining a permission scheme, it's then up to you to add users to project roles. By default, the creator of the project is assigned the project lead and is given all permissions. You can add users to project roles in three different ways: individually, with teams, or by inviting them as guests. Let's start by adding a manager to my project. I will type in the name of the manager and set the role to managers, and click Add. Remember, the permission given to the manager is defined in the permission scheme we established earlier. Next up, let's add the engineers to the project. Rather than add each engineer individually, we are going to add the whole engineering team to this project and assign them the role of engineers. You can see the permissions that role is given in the permission scheme just below the name in the list. The final option for adding users to the project is the Invite Guests option. Guests are not members of your company. Outside contractors, vendors, or suppliers are good examples of guests. Guests only see the documents they have been invited to, and all work done by the guest is tracked within the enterprise. Guests make it possible to share your projects with certain groups outside the company without losing control over your data. After defining the individuals, teams, or guests and their roles in this project, you're ready to create it. Simply click OK, and your project will be created, and the appropriate people will have the access they need. So now that we've gone through creating a project, defining a permission scheme, and adding roles, now let's go through how to establish those roles and permission schemes. As an admin or owner of a company, in the top right corner, click your username, and you will see the option for Company Settings. From the company settings, choose Project Roles, and you will see your existing project roles. You can double-click an existing project role to edit or create a new project role by clicking the Create Project Role button in the top right. Here, I will give my project role a name and description. Remember, the permissions for this role will be defined in the permission schemes later. In this example, I'm going to create a documentation role in my company for the team that manages our product documentation. Now that we've created that new project role, let's define the permissions for this new role by adding them to a permission scheme. As I mentioned earlier, think of a permission scheme as applying a group of permissions at once. You can see that my company has two permission schemes, Project Default and the Restricted Access Permission Scheme. The project roles and the permissions for each in this scheme are on the right-hand side. You can see that Project Default Permission Scheme allows for view access for project roles like manufacturers and suppliers, whereas the Restricted Access Permission Scheme is much more limited in who has access. Only engineers, managers, and project leads will be able to see the projects that have Restricted Access Permission Scheme applied. You can edit the default permission scheme by double-clicking on it, and then double-click the project role that you want to edit within that permission scheme, or add an entirely new project role to this permission scheme by clicking Add Project Role in the top right. Here, I'm adding the documentation project role to this permission scheme and defining the permissions as View and Comment. You can also create entirely new permission schemes. Click Create Scheme in the top right, give it a name and description, and then add project roles to your scheme and define their permissions. After creating a permission scheme, you will see it as an option when creating new projects or when editing existing projects. One final comment about company settings. On the left side, you will also see global permissions. These are permissions independent of any project role or permission scheme. Global permissions allow you as an administrator to delegate administrative tasks to others in your company. For instance, those defined as managers have the ability to add or remove users from the company, permanently delete documents, or manage the role-based access control that we discussed earlier. To edit these permissions, simply double-click the permission and add the individual or team to that permission. Projects and role-based access control give Onshape Enterprise customers the ability to create and deploy projects to the right people quickly and consistently.